Oh, hello. Sorry, I didn't see you there. I've just been reading through tonight's edition of the Jersey Evening Pravda, and really is, if it wasn't so serious, one would have to laugh at it. And I was just reading the propaganda section on page 10, and incidentally, we're talking about Monday, the 3rd of September 2012 here. Now, I'm aware that some of the viewers to this blog won't necessarily come from Jersey, so very briefly to explain, Jersey is a small island which is in between France and the UK, which has a population of 100,000, but we only have one newspaper, which is unusual even for a very small island. Usually you'd have more than one newspaper which would give a multiplicity of views and political opinions. We only have the one, and it's consistently allied itself with the political and ruling elites in Jersey. And this is what we've seen in this article today. So it's even more important in a small community with only one newspaper that newspaper should exercise additional caution in not being biased and being objective. And I'm just going to deconstruct the propaganda section on page 10 for you, which is titled Democracy, Not Just Efficiency, which actually bears no relevance to the rest of the editorial. First of all, it should be known that the individual who's heading up our electoral commission, which is supposed to be independent, is actually a minister himself. He's an elected member of our states. Now that's a problem because in Jersey we've, for the last 12 years, if not more, we've had a big trouble about getting states reform through. Everyone acknowledges there's a drastic need for it, an urgent need for it. But because states members have been involved and they veto it, and they protect their own positions, this hasn't been able to be done. This is why we want an independent one, but that's not happened anymore. The other thing to remember is that the Jersey Evening Pravda played an important role in running Sir Philip Balash's election campaign, which essentially saw him getting front page coverage. The first night of the hustings, he was on the front page and his words were given precedence over the other 12 candidates, something which wouldn't have happened if the newspaper had been acting in a balanced manner, and if there had been checks and balances that controlled the media in a positive way. So let's look at this article. It comes up with various statements here which are unverified, which don't stand up to objective criticism. And they start off by saying that the former bailiff, that's Sir Philip Balash, has given some clear indications of what the likely findings will be from the review. Now remember, this is an ongoing review. They've still got another week to go before they have their final hearing. They've still got evidence to consider from the public. And he's come out with these two indications of what the findings are likely to be, namely the retention of the constables and a 4-year term. And the JEP article, the Jersey Evening Propaganda, says that actually the retention of the constables is likely to be widely welcomed, despite the insistence of a vociferous minority. Now let's look at this. Actually, the majority of submissions to the Electoral Commission have asked for the automatic right of constables to be removed. Incidentally, constables are basically a sheriff, if you like. They're kind of a feudal type of policeman who automatically gets a position as a member of Parliament in Jersey. And a lot of people have questioned whether they should be able to do the two roles and whether that's in fact democratic. And the majority of submissions have asked for that position to cease and for a more democratic method of electing them to be put in place. And the other thing is that these have come from a cross-section of the political spectrum. They haven't just come from the usual the reformists, those perhaps on the left. They've come from people on the Conservative benches, on the right. Even the chef de police in the parishes who work with the constables have asked, in some cases, for the roles to be separated. So the argument of a vociferous minority has to be discounted straight away. They say that, for example, each of the 12 heads of parishes is uniquely well placed to understand and act upon the views and needs of their local communities that he or she serves. Well, this is a strange statement to make, because any states member, whether you're a deputy, a constable or a senator, represents a constituency. They might be different sizes, but clearly each of those is in contact, hopefully, with a number of members and knows what the feelings are of some of the stakeholders in their varying constituencies. So to say that they're uniquely placed simply by virtue of the fact that they're constables is a bit of a strange statement to make. It doesn't stand up to any scrutiny. The big issue that they don't tackle is are the arguments. They don't look at what arguments are being put forward for or against maintaining the constables. Certainly when people talk about the disproportionality involved, the fact that in St Mary, with a population of 1,600 people, compared to St Helier, which has a population of 33,000, each gets one constable in the States, and there's a clear disproportionality there, which needs to be addressed. It's simply not acceptable to have that vast disproportionality in representation. Of course, there's no mention of that. So rather than ask the key questions, the meaningful questions which should be debated, they go on to ask their own question, saying the key question is then how well the constable serves and reflects their electorate. And they go on to answer the question themselves, saying they do that very well. So they don't even give the reader, options there. There's no balance, and then they put a question for you and they answer it themselves. I mean, this really shouldn't be taken seriously as any kind of credible journalism. The editor, Chris Bright, I don't know what's happened there. Presumably he can't be this intellectually challenged in order to be writing nonsense like this. It can only be that the propaganda has come from another place and he's doing somebody a favour by printing it in the newspaper. And it finishes off by saying, in reality, there was not much wrong with the old system of 12 constables, 12 senators, and a few deputies to make up the numbers, if you like. And this really is a strange statement to make when we already acknowledge that there are fundamental problems in the States. So really the message is, when reading the Jersey Evening Propaganda, or the Jersey Evening Pravda as it's officially known as, it's just to make sure that we ask these questions, to be aware of the fact that it is being used as a mouthpiece for a moribund establishment who are trying to cling on to power, who are seeing that actually common sense, logic and the groundswell of opinion from the public is not going in their favour, and we're seeing the relevant, the corresponding desperate attempts from their media in order to deal with that. So this editorial, I think, in my opinion, comes across as a desperate attempt to influence the public with a partial and with flawed arguments, because the political elite know that they're on a losing wicket and that the groundswell of public opinion is turning against them.